Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fadwa Wazwaz, and I wanted to discuss actually the transition. We just finished celebrating Martin Luther King Jr., um, commemorating his life, and we're beginning the next 4 years of a new president and a new administration. And I share this quote more than one time, and I'd like to share it as we are transitioning into a new president and a new administration. If I could just show you my notes, this would probably help in. I was told to have captions for individuals who, like from the deaf community. And so I figured I'll just read my notes. That way they could see the notes while I also discuss them as well. So let me share with you my notes. This began from yesterday's year ago. A year ago yesterday, I should say. I am in the theme this month. This year, the theme is the strong role. Last year, when it was the month of Rajab also, the theme was handling uncertainty, harness the wind. And I explained that this is the seventh month of the Islamic calendar, also one of the four sacred months in Islam, which battles are prohibited. It's supposed to give time for people to step back from the heat of fighting, reflect on the decisions that they are engaged in, consider the impact on their life, on their country, on all the full impact of it, and see maybe if they want a different solution. It helps us to ground us, turning to God, giving a time out from the situation to reflect and to think it through. The root letters of the month Rajab, which is the seventh month of the Islamic calendar, Rajaba, it means to hold in awe or fear as in an authority figure. Like a lot of times, or now with this new presidency, people have fear of Trump, for example. But really, this fear we're only supposed to have of God. So that we have this because he's authority. He has power over us, over everyone in the universe, including the coming president or president now, Trump. There's a great importance in having this awe of God and nurturing in one's heart. At one point in our lives, we were all seeds implanted in our mother's womb. Every heart has an awe of something or someone. Awe teaches individuals are more receptive to receiving nurturing, guidance, correction, and direction from those they hold in awe, those they have respect for, admiration for. So if you look at, for example, people who love Trump, for example, if he was to correct them or give them direction, they'd follow. Example. Likewise, when we have an awe of God, it's not enough to just say, I love God and I believe, like there has to be in the heart this complete awe and complete respect and complete fear of his authority, that he has the power to punish and he has the power to nurture and to guide and to comfort and to heal. So we have to have that awe of God in our hearts in order for us to receive the blessings from God. We all heard the quote, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. You've all heard that. It's not an Islamic saying. It's not from Sharia, for example. And so I bring it front and center. If people in Gaza or people in the West Bank or people in East Jerusalem are not able to bloom, we look at the environment, the occupation, the colonization, the systematic oppression, the apartheid. You look at the legal system that is designed, again, basic laws to elevate one group and denigrate another. Not the people who are being oppressed and abused. In this case, how does one fix the environment? So I'd like to take you to a verse in the Quran, chapter 6, 164. Only the criminal pays the price. We don't believe in Islamic theology that we shoulder the sins of others. So let me just read the verse itself. You can reach out to Muslims, theologians, and ask them to give you a scholarly commentary. I did not include the scholarly commentary here, but I paraphrase some of the understanding from it. Say, and God teaches us how to argue and what argument to put on the table. Am I then to seek a sustainer other than God when He's the sustainer of all things? And whatever wrong any human being commits rests upon himself alone. And no bearer of burdens shall be made to bear another's burden. And in time, unto your sustainer, you must all return, and He will make you truly understand all that on which you were wont to differ. We saw how oppressors, when they oppress, they blur the lines. Not that just they blur the lines, they remove, in fact, all lines. Everybody's guilty. Anyone who said hello to the person that supposedly could be a criminal is guilty. There is no due process. There is no fair representation. Everybody that's related to that person, child, mother, whoever it is guilty. And we see how God judges right here. And it's understood when, as I said, when you're God's chosen people, you tend to be, as I mentioned in a previous post a few days ago, be worshipers of God. Be, faithful to God in your worship. Be true, be sincere in your worship. He doesn't want lip service. He doesn't want you to turn your faith into a sport, my religion versus your religion, pow. Be genuinely sincere and true worshipers to God. People who tend to go down that road tend to take on those attributes that God wants you to take on, which is that no bearer of burden can carry another's burden. So if we compare how God judges, this is how He will judge on the day of judgment. Your children will not be accountable for what you've done. And reflect again on how oppressors rationalize and drop thousands of pounds of bombs on anything that moves that is not related to them. Again, versus how God judges crimes of people. Unless you're complicit in the crime, you're not responsible. If you don't have power, you're not responsible to stop it. If you have voice, you can use your voice. If you have power, you'll be questioned why you didn't use your power to stop it. If you don't have power, you don't have voice, and you did not even hate it in your heart and turn to God and make prayers, you'll be asked why you didn't feel that pain. Because you're supposed to feel the pain when somebody else is calling for help, calling for protection, calling for help, calling for protection, and you don't. There's something wrong with you. It's easy for us, easy for me, so I'll start with myself. To preach justice, love, compassion, and mercy. You get brownie points, you look good. Everybody likes you. It's easy to claim that one is more compassionate to human beings than their creator. That's why you get these questions of why do bad things happen to good people? Because again, we think that if God gave us power, we would be more compassionate and more loving than God was. God tests us and says, okay, well, here's power. And then we bear witness and we see that totally zero compassion or mercy for even preemies. Even, preemies in the ICU. Pregnant women were driven over by tank. How a person can do that to people who are alive, I don't know, how they could do that. But the idea that someone who could do that is now going to be roaming the world freely, that is very problematic. That somebody who's going to have engaged in all of these type of crimes and sadistically celebrating. They're not celebrating the hostages, but they were celebrating the murder of others. Makes you like, how do you like respond that somebody like that is going to be roaming freely? How do you feel safe? How do you feel secure that these people are going to be roaming the global community after having committed such crimes that we've all witnessed? We've witnessed the destruction of Gaza live with the power they had. Imagine if God gave them the power to sustain the universe. What would have happened? Would have all been extinct by now. The more one hears them and listens to their arguments, the more one really increases in faith, as I mentioned. And the more they speak, literally like the Quran gave the blueprint of how they would respond, how they would act, how they would argue, how they would judge. Hopefully, after we have witnessed, we can come to the realization that anyone who's going to be saying, speaking about questioning God's love or God's mercy or God's compassion, we'd like to question them. What did they do or say when Gaza was facing a genocide? This is yesterday, a year ago. This is 5 years ago, January 21, 2020. Experience versus theory. This is a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. As I said, we're transitioning. Yesterday, we commemorated his life. And we also welcomed the new president and his administration. It's hard for many to understand the experiences of others. That's why we more often than not sanitize them. It's a human condition, by the way. We belittle them, we distort them, or we counter them. I don't just face this as a Palestinian or a Muslim, from Americans, European Americans, I should say, or Zionists. I also see it from some individuals in the community who are actually Muslims too. But they lived maybe a very pampered life. We can only understand the surface of things based on our own realities and experiences. We color things outside of us with what is inside of us internally. We just celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Many voices spoke about how his voice was sanitized after his death. And some that didn't support him now claim him. He was a hated figure before that, not fully accepted even by Blacks. This is a telling sign, really, of a leader of justice. He doesn't have a large leaders. People are, what is the word I'm saying? Like a cheerleaders, like blind cheerleaders. He's actually fought internally and externally. So he has to kind of face like the fire of both as he's bringing or she's bringing justice and what is beneficial for the community. I recall once listening to an Arab Muslim woman I respect much talking about misogyny in Libya. She had a PhD and she comes from a well-off family and never experienced misogyny in her own family. She spoke on how she was loved, and treated exactly like her brothers. However, she wanted to solve the problems of women living overseas. She grew up in the West. She never experienced misogyny in her family. She said, that's her words. I don't want to mention her name because I don't want it to be into a personal issue. And I'm just mentioning details because I also have an issue with other people. And so when you use the word pamper, they always assume you're referring to that. She wanted to solve the problems of women living overseas who are experiencing misogyny in their homes or community. It reminded me of also my younger days. I was such a phenomenal parent when I could give theoretically advice on how to raise a children without having children. Then when I became a mother, you had to really put all the books away because it wasn't like the books said. You had to deal with frustrations, sleep deprivation, exhaustion. It was a whole different experience when you're really raising a child than when you're trying to teach people how to raise a child without ever having a child of your own and having to go through that experience of raising a child. The takeaway from these frustrations is that those experiencing the issues on the ground in Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, need to form a coalition and communicate as well as lead their community in resolving their problems. Anyone who wishes to help them must do so under the umbrella, shared, solicited feedback and input, or they can amplify their voices. They must be leading. The Palestinians in Gaza, Palestinians in the West Bank, the Palestinians in East Jerusalem must be leading if anyone wishes to help them. You go under their umbrella. This is how help is offered. It has to be solicited. It has to be accepted from those who are seeking help. I do believe in BDS, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And I don't believe it's just a free speech issue. I believe it's about accepting the responsibility and the accountability that we're going to be held to if we do not tell those who are engaging in criminal behavior that there are going to be consequences. This is not about singling out any people or singling out any community. This is about responsibility and accountability to end criminal behavior. Likewise, for other communities experiencing various forms of oppression. It would be great if such a coalition is formed also for Chinese Muslims. When I wrote this, it was under the theme of peace or corruption because there's also situations in China that's taking place where Muslims are also experiencing, they're a minority, and they're experiencing injustice in China. Some of like the re-education camps in China that is taking place have been harming and oppressing Muslims. So it would be good for them to form also such a group that can also respond and end the oppression against Muslims in China. This should not be seeking to destroy or dismantle those in power, but to end the oppression. Islam doesn't come to destroy, and destroy and destroy. It comes to remove oppression, remove oppression, remove oppression, and bring those who see themselves as I am your Lord Most High down to earth. It deflates that ego. Which leads us to ask how our problem solved. There is the escape route. We can say, let's just pretend the problem doesn't exist. And the West has done that, in fact, for Palestinians. And this is October 7th was the wake-up call saying you really can't solve problems by pretending they don't exist. There is a despair route, which is, again, you kill the problem. And this is what we've seen from Israelis. Just kill. Their solution to everything is kill. Why? Because they're full of despair. They say they're full of hope, but I would argue they're full of despair. And what came out in Gaza is these Zionists are a people full of despair, not hope. We saw hope in Palestinians. We saw despair from Israelis and their supporters. And there is the faith route, which is facing the problem and slowly chipping away at the layers of darknesses, allowing the light to emerge, similar to how we watch every day from dawn break until the sun reaches its zenith. It is an understanding that problems will never be fully resolved, but they will continue to challenge us and those around us to know ourselves and each other. Can sit around, a dinner table, and I could do taqiyya with you and praise you, say blah, blah, and be plotting behind the scenes something else. Or be upfront, straightforward, tell it to you like it is. But you probably don't like that and respect that as well, do you? I'd like to end with a saying, as I said, I have her fan, and I mentioned this in the very beginning of a quote that I like to repeat every time. Sometimes we transition from one important event to another. As we're coming to these 4 years, giving President Trump another chance to prove himself, I'd like to end with this quote, and for him and for us and all to reflect on it. We can learn much about ourselves from the challenges that bring out our impatience, our bigotry, our lack of compassion, our need to be in control or to be a victim of circumstance, our ability to give and receive, our ability to accept our own selves, thus others. We are presented with an opportunity to realize what is really important, and that we are not perfect, and that we each all have few issues of our own that we need to work on and to better ourselves so that we may help others. If we are impatient, for example, we ask ourselves, why are we so impatient? But we don't ask and answer the question ourselves. How can we answer the question when we still think and perceive as before? When we think and perceive a situation without change, nothing actually changes. So we must wait for the answer to present itself to us. This will come to us in many ways, but in that process, changes will be taking place within us to ready us for the answer. and to be open to that answer. By doing so, we learn more about ourselves and are more ready for the next stage in our jihad. Yes, so I'm inviting you to jihad, the struggle of the soul. And so I believe the answer was presented in Gaza to Zionists, Israelis. You are in despair. You are in despair. Your actions are a reflection of a soul and a heart that is empty and full of despair. And some of the telling signs is questioning God, Eli Wiesel prosecuting God, lack of compassion, bigotry, holding everyone and anything that moves to carry the burden of another, wanting to destroy everything and anything. These are all signs of a soul and a heart full of despair. And God put before you true reality of hope, the true reality of people full of hope. And I say that because I hear this a lot from Zionists, and particularly I'm mentioning here. I think I got his name correct. Greensblatt, John Greensblatt, I think from the ADL, where he's like, we're full of hope. We're full of hope. And I believe this situation brought out the answer for you because you answered your own question, you rationalized. And so what was presented before you was you're full of despair. The Zionists are full of despair. Christian Zionists, Jewish Zionists, whatever faith group you belong to, Zionists, you're full of despair. We saw it. Your solutions, these are not solutions of hope. These are solutions of a heart and a soul full of despair. As I said, I wrote this 5 years ago, because this is how our faith in the Quran teaches us, is the solutions you put on the table tell us a lot about you. And I hope you can take this and reflect on it. I'm open to your response, but I hope you can take it and reflect on it. And as you're looking at pictures of Gaza, question for you is, where is the hope that you claim is within you? So I leave it at that. And I hope that this stirs someone's heart that may start to create a ripple effect. And hopefully that we can look at these next 4 years and reflect on the lessons that we have to learn in this struggle of our soul. Last 4 years, Joe Biden failed. Antony Blinken failed. Kamala Harris failed. Matthew Miller failed. Let's see what these 4 years will show. I don't like to psychoanalyze people. The Quran tells us they must reveal themselves by themselves. So I begin the next 4 years with this video. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.